You should hear what keeps him up at night.
This is what keeps me up at night. I don't understand how my fellow Americans, I don't even understand how this election is close. And yes, I'm voting for you, but I would also vote for that wall over there.
Well, he's half right. We do need a wall. To keep out gang members, fentanyl dealers, human traffickers, and Anna Navarro. What's funny, though, is that Stern actually thought that was a compliment. Stern has become such a wussified sycophant, he doesn't realize that telling Kamala that he'd vote for a wall is telling her that he knows she's as dumb as one. This week on his radio show, Howard Stern defended wokeism, saying it's a compliment when someone calls him woke. Listen.
If woke means I can't get behind Trump, which is what I think it means, or that I support people who want to be transgender, or I'm for the vaccine, well, dude, call me woke as you want. I'm not for stupidity, but I am woke, motherfucker, and I love it.
Oh dear, he swore. He swore that'll win over the woke.
Greg didn't stop at personality. He dug into content. Stern's show, once a raw, raging fire of unapologetic humor, has turned into a lukewarm puddle of celebrity bootlicking. Gutfeld described it as like watching a lion become a lapdog, neutered, declawed, and too busy licking the shoes of A-listers to remember what it means to be dangerous. The once unpredictable Stern is now about as edgy as a hotel lobby plant. And the interviews? Greg let out a snort of disgust thinking about them. What used to be brutal, unfiltered conversations that made publicists sweat are now puff pieces designed to help actors promote sequels no one asked for. Howard used to grill people. Now he warms their toes by the fire and asks about their favorite candle scent. Gut joked that if Stern got any cozier with his guests, the FCC might have to rate his interviews PG for pure goo. Then Greg zeroed in on the hypocrisy. The guy who made a career mocking virtue signaling is now the grand marshal of the virtue parade. Gutfeld called it performance penance, Howard's never-ending mission to erase every wild moment from his past by overcorrecting into full-blown moral panic. He joked that if Stern issued one more on-air apology for something he said 20 years ago, the Library of Congress would have to dedicate a wing to his public mea culpas.
But Stern being holed up in his house that long, it explains a lot of things. Like how you forget how other people live, especially in hard times like a pandemic. For the longest time, 2 years in fact, the same time Stern's been AWOL, I wondered where he went. Not physically, but mentally. I bet you did too. Remember his screeds about COVID? They were epic and angry and not—
And it wasn't just the content that changed, it was the posture. Gutfeld mocked the way Stern now carries himself, like he's above the world he used to revel in. He pointed out that Stern's smug disdain for anyone who doesn't align with his new beliefs reeks of insecurity, not enlightenment. It's not growth, Greg argued. It's retreat. The moment the heat came, Howard didn't stand taller. He folded, retreated, and then tried to pretend he never lit the match in the first place. Greg even brought up Stern's bizarre obsession with being liked. He pointed out how a man who once proudly declared he didn't care what anyone thought now spends half his time trying to impress the very cultural institutions that used to blacklist him. Gutfeld painted it perfectly, a once untouchable icon now begging for relevance from the very people who once prayed he'd disappear. He also took aim at Stern's fans, or at least what's left of them. Gutfeld joked that Howard's current audience is like a support group for people who miss the old days, but are too afraid to say it out loud in case they get canceled by the guy they used to worship. He said listening to Stern now is like watching your favorite punk band go acoustic, replace their leather with linen, and start doing Whole Foods commercials. Then came the political dive.
I remember Stern used to throw bologna slices at strippers' butts. With accuracy, I might add. Now he's worried the possible leader of the free world can't handle his verbal foot rub. I wonder if he used to get this nervous for the strippers before he'd spank them on their bare asses with a dead fish.
If you're enjoying this video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon. Greg tore into how Stern's politics mutated from chaotic neutral to sanctimonious hall monitor. The guy who once roasted every side equally now sounds like a talking points puppet for every fashionable outrage trending on social media. Gutfeld said Stern didn't just pick a side. He outsourced his thinking to Twitter and MSNBC, then wrapped it in a bow of moral superiority so tight it's suffocating his remaining credibility. Greg ranted about the absurdity of watching Howard scold others for saying things he used to laugh at daily. It's like a bank robber becoming a mall cop and lecturing kids about shoplifting. He said the irony burns because Stern didn't just sell out, he bought into the very thing he used to torch. The rebellion is gone, replaced with a guy who sounds more like an HR compliance officer than a rebel radio host. Then he tackled the Hollywood obsession. Gutfeld mocked Stern's need to be accepted by the elite circles he once trashed. He laughed about the endless name drops, the gushing praise for A-listers, the way Stern now acts like he's auditioning for a spot at the Oscars just by being in the same room. Greg said watching Stern cozy up to celebrities now is like watching a former cage fighter doing ballet. Elegant, maybe, but mostly.
It's my theory. Wokeism is a contagion. Stern got it from Jimmy Kimmel, his new best friend, and Kimmel got it from his wife, and his wife got it from where you get all infections, a toilet seat. Kat, I find that his definition of wokeism is very simplistic. I mean, it's like, it's not about COVID.
Greg went even deeper, asking if Stern ever actually stood for anything, or if it was all just an act from the beginning. Maybe he was never the fearless truth-teller he claimed to be. Maybe he was just a guy who read the room better than most and knew exactly how to shock his way to fame. And now, maybe he's reading a different room and performing a new role, this time, the polished progressive sage who scolds the very rebellion he once led. But the real punch? Greg said Stern isn't evolving, he's erasing, scrubbing away the past, rewriting his own history, and acting like it was all just a phase. But it wasn't a phase. It was who he was. And now he's trying to cover it up with layers of social justice slogans and faux remorse so thick you'd think he was prepping for sainthood. Gutfeld called it cowardice dressed up as wisdom. Stern didn't face the music. He fled the concert and now lectures anyone who still listens to rock and roll. The transformation wasn't admirable. It was embarrassing. And worst of all, it was predictable. Because that's what happens when rebels stop rebelling. They become what they once mocked. They become safe. And in Stern's case, they become so obsessed with being accepted, they forget why anyone cared about them in the first place.
When are we going to stop putting up with the idiots in this country and just say, it's mandatory to get vaccinated? Fuck them, fuck their freedom. I want my freedom to live.
Man, this guy makes Anthony Fauci sound like a Canadian trucker. But, maybe you should follow his next vaccine with a shot of Valium. But it's weird. He went from ridiculing the man to becoming him. No longer embracing rebellion, he French kisses regulation. He went from mocking a radio executive who was a rigid by-the-book a-hole that he named Pig Vomit to being Pig Vomit himself. He went from Howard Stern.
Greg leaned back, smiling. He hadn't just roasted Howard Stern. He had peeled the layers back and revealed a man so consumed with his own legacy, he forgot how to live up to it. Stern used to lead the charge. Now he holds the clipboard and checks names off a guest list. And the mic was still hot. Gutfeld wasn't done, not by a long shot. With the crowd still recovering from the fallout, he rolled up his sleeves and got ready to dig deeper. Because beneath the sellout and behind the celebrity curtain, Howard Stern had become something even more pitiful than irrelevant. He'd become predictable. And for a guy who once thrived on being the curveball no one could catch, predictability was the ultimate failure. Greg focused in on that. He said Stern used to be the guy who made people lean in because you never knew what was coming. Now, you already know. Every segment, every opinion, every sycophantic Hollywood interview is wrapped in the same bland packaging. Gutfeld joked that you could set your watch to Stern's takes, every one of them a carbon copy of the last 3 years of mainstream media panic, wrapped in a watered-down monologue about how we should all be better people, delivered from a multi-million-dollar soundproof booth, lined with soft pillows of self-righteousness, guilt, and downright ass.
Howard went from getting people to fart songs out of their butt to commiserating with the super wealthy about the evils of Trump, who was a guest on Howard's show many times. But I get it now. He's got new friends and they bring new views. It's celebrity peer pressure. But the fact that he hasn't left his house in 2 years means that his views are BS. He was in a happy self-imposed lockdown with everything. Mansion on the beach, limitless options for food and entertainment. That's not real life. That's a 2-year all-inclusive vacation at Sandals Royal Barbados.
And then came the kicker, Stern's new obsession with fear. Greg shredded that angle with precision. He said the man who used to thrive on chaos has now built his life around avoiding discomfort at all costs. Germs, confrontation, opinions he doesn't like. It's all off limits now. Gutfeld called it the Howard Stern fortress of fragility, where reality can't touch him and criticism echoes off the padded walls of his bunker. He joked that Stern used to laugh in the face of outrage. Now, he practically files a noise complaint if someone raises their voice. Greg dove into the psychology of it. He said what made Stern captivating was the way he poked the bear, rattled the cage, and dared anyone to challenge him. But now, Stern flinches before the door, even clicks. He's not poking bears. He's petting kittens in a cashmere robe, sipping lukewarm tea, and calling it courage.
It's incredibly brave to take this stance after you've made $300, $400 million not being woke, right? Loving Donald Trump, exploiting the mentally ill, wearing blackface. Look at the crop of woke comics, whether it's Stern or Jimmy Kimmel, his BFF, Sarah Silverman, Joy Behar, Michael Ian Black. What do they all have in common? They wore blackface. And then they went woke. It's not a chicken or egg thing there. You know what order it came. So I call this BFR. It's blackface reparations. There's nothing in Stern's previous career that could withstand this modern witch hunt.
The rebel who once spit in the face of conformity now hides behind it like it's a safety blanket. Then Greg turned to the legacy Stern is trying to protect. The legacy he believes he's preserving by softening every edge, rebranding every moment of controversy, and pretending the past was just a misguided warm-up for this new, enlightened version of himself. Gutfeld laughed. He said, "Real legacy isn't about erasing your past. It's about owning it." Stern isn't writing a new chapter. He's redacting the old ones and acting like the ink was never there. Greg even compared it to a rock star who got famous for smashing guitars, only to come back 20 years later with an acoustic set at a recycling lecture. Sure, some people clap, but deep down, everyone misses the noise, the danger, the honesty. Gutfeld said Stern's biggest mistake wasn't changing, it was pretending he didn't. And just when you thought Greg might finally pump the brakes, he delivered one more shot, right between the eyes. He said Stern isn't the king of all media anymore. He's the court jester for the establishment. Still in costume, still performing, but now dancing for applause instead of drawing blood. And the saddest part? He doesn't even know the difference anymore. Greg Gutfeld just unleashed a savage takedown of Howard Stern that left no illusion standing. Once the rebellious king of shock radio, Stern is now the polished puppet of Hollywood elites, and Gutfeld isn't letting him off the hook. With razor-sharp wit and brutal honesty, he tears into Stern's sanitized persona, cringeworthy pandering, and total transformation into the very thing he once mocked. If you thought Stern still had an edge, Gutfeld just proved it's completely gone. And
Dinner isn't the story. It's what Howard said later on his radio show. Quote, "I really had an exhausting weekend. Emotionally, physically. For the first time in 2 years, I ventured out of the house." Now, maybe he's exaggerating. We all do that. In fact, the more successful you get in media, the more exhausting, the easier.
Greg Gutfeld didn't just stroll into this one. He charged in with the swagger of a guy who just found out his favorite punching bag had duct taped a "Kick Me" sign to his own back. And that punching bag? None other than the self-anointed king of all media, Howard Stern, a man who went from flipping the bird at authority to flipping through cue cards written by PR consultants. Gutfeld wasn't holding back. He came with ammo, aim, and zero interest in subtlety.
What an about face. It's not unlike Howard Stern. I mean, talk about a transition. On Tuesday, he conducted an interview with Kamala Harris that was so simpering and feminine, I got my period while listening to it.
He opened fire by mocking the transformation, or rather, the total personality transplant, of Howard Stern. Once the outlaw radio renegade, Now the sanitized again, and triple sanitized mascot of everything he used to ridicule. Greg painted the image of a man who used to light up the airwaves like a Molotov cocktail, now showing up on morning shows, sipping almond milk and offering soft-spoken wisdom like a retired therapist on a book tour.
But that's how Stern can call snacking with celebs at a fancy restaurant exhausting. Exhausting. Like he finished the overnight shift in a coal mine. Or hearing Kat talk about her pets.
Fair.
But I get it, life is tough, especially when you've been cut off from the world for 2 years in a $20 million beef.
Interview. Gutfeld laughed at how Stern, who built his career mocking phonies, had become the biggest phony of them all. The man who once turned shock jockery into an Olympic sport now whispers his way through interviews like he's afraid to wake the interns in HR. Greg called it the greatest plot twist in media history, not because Stern evolved, but because he sold out with such breathtaking enthusiasm. He made infomercial hosts look principled.
Even more pathetic, wondering how she doesn't nap.
When you said you don't nap, I get it, because like what you've taken on is extraordinarily difficult. And I mean, do you feel the pressure of the moment in the sense that, like when I met you out in the hall, I said, I'm really nervous because I want this to go well for you. I want it to go well for the country.
Hold on. I need a minute.
Then he took a jab at the irony. The very machine Stern once attacked, the pearl-clutching media elite, the politically correct hall monitors, the coastal cocktail class, he now gladly serves like a sommelier of soft takes. Gutfeld wondered aloud how a man who used to roast celebrities for their fake personas somehow ended up marrying one, and becoming a parody of the very phoniness he once swore to destroy. Okay,